So what is the Disney Skyliner and how exactly does it work? Is there a cost to ride it? Where can it take you? Well, today we're going to ride it throughout the entire Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando, Florida, and answer all of your questions. Along the way, I'm going to share with you everything you need to know on how to best use the Disney Skyliner to help you ace the magic. Today we're going from Hollywood Studios to Caribbean Beach Resort. This was recorded on February 1st and 2nd, 2024. Right now we're in the parking lot of Disney's Hollywood Studios. To access this lot, you either need to purchase a ticket to park here or have an annual pass or similar that covers parking. Alternatively, you can take a bus, boat, or rideshare like Uber or Lyft. Disney actually offers a special minivan service through Lyft, but we'll cover those other transportation options in other videos. So what is the Skyliner? The Disney Skyliner is a gondola lift system that will take you from some theme parks to some resorts and vice versa, but not to every resort and not to every theme park. It currently has stations at Hollywood Studios, as seen here, one at Caribbean Beach Resort, one in between Pop Century Resort and Art of Animation Resort, one at the Riviera Resort, and one at Epcot. Now, I know I said I'd cover the buses in another video, but just for perspective, right here is where the bus station is. The Skyliner cabins that you ride in are themed with different colors. Many, but not all, feature characters from Marvel, Pixar, Star Wars, and plenty of other characters throughout Disney's over 100-year history. In fact, you can sometimes find popcorn buckets and other merchandise themed to specific cabins such as Guardians of the Galaxy, Chip and Dale, Mickey and Minnie Mouse, and so much more at the theme parks and beyond. Now, this station has some great theming to match Hollywood Studios' overall classic old Hollywood vibe, and like I said earlier, this was recorded in February, which is just after a refurbishment to the Skyliner was completed. This isn't the first time they've refurbished the Skyliner at this time of year, so if you're visiting around this time, or any time really, make sure you check the My Disney Experience app or the Walt Disney World website for closures on attractions, restaurants, and forms of transportation like the Skyliner here. For the Skyliner specifically, some stations might be open for 1 week during a refurbishment, while others may be closed that same week, so make sure you're reading carefully as to which stations are closed and when. Another very important thing to consider when choosing the Skyliner or any form of transportation at Walt Disney World is the weather. Here in Florida, it can get very windy. It can rain very hard, and sometimes you may even be in a hailstorm. It's actually happened to me at Epcot. At the front of the station, you'll see a sign telling you when the Skyliner closes. You'll want to check this as this can change throughout the year, as park hours can change, and sometimes there's special events that will cause the Skyliner and parks to close earlier than you might think. Now, this information should be provided to you ahead of time when purchasing tickets or in the My Disney Experience app or Walt Disney World website, but it doesn't hurt to check this while you're walking by or when you're getting on the Skyliner to visit another park or resort. Wheelchair access to the left. You can also find closing times for the other Skyliner stations right here, and if that's not enough, you can always ask a cast member, as there's usually at least one in this area to help guests. This next sign tells you which station you're boarding to and which stations you can transfer to. Keep in mind, to get to Epcot, you need to head towards the Riviera Resort first, but we'll talk about that when we get to the Caribbean Beach Resort station. Now we're heading up this ramp to board our Skyliner cabin. As of the recording of this video, you can bring strollers on the Skyliner cabins. However, I would highly recommend again checking the Walt Disney World website or the My Disney Experience app to see what kind of strollers are allowed, as they've changed which ones are allowed over time. That being said, there is a sign here that will give you some information regarding what is and is not allowed and how to properly sit in the cabins. It also tells you how many people are allowed per cabin. At this point, you're going to see the Skyliner cabins in 2 lines. This might seem obvious, but you'll want to choose the line with less people. As you make your way towards the end of the line into your Skyliner cabin, you'll see at least one team member sorting people out for the different Skyliner cabins. Depending on how many people are with you and how busy it is, you could get a Skyliner cabin to yourself, or you may be paired to ride with others. Also, if you have a stroller, make note as to how that person just folded their stroller when they were getting aboard the Skyliner cabin. The always helpful cast member will ask how many people are in your party, and you'll tell them so they can help sort you into a cabin. Now, I personally will hold up my fingers to show how many as well. Once the cabin is ready, the cast member will tell you to board and tell you to watch your step, which you should. Try to catch any of the cast members' names as well on their name tag, or simply ask them, and then go into the My Disney Experience app to give them a cast member compliment when you have a moment. Then once you board, pick a side, sit down, and enjoy the ride. Once everybody is boarded, the doors are going to shut very similarly to the way the monorail doors do, which again, I'll have a guide on that in the future. Now, what is probably the most important thing you need to know is right here at the initial takeoff, and also when you descend down into the next station, is that the Skyliner cabin speeds up quite a bit, so make sure you're seated and ready for it. It also sort of swings a little bit. As you move along, you're going to reach multiple towers. Every time you reach a tower, you'll hear gets slightly bumpy for a moment or two. Now if you're seated like I am here, then to your left is going to be the bus station that we looked at earlier, and you'll see incoming Skyliner cabins on the left as well. To pass the time, you can try naming every character from the Skyliner cabins that pass by. Speaking of, you'll notice that you may see some of the same characters on several Skyliner cabins, sometimes even on a cabin with the same color scheme or a different one. The rest of what you're seeing below is going to be the parking lot. To the right, you'll notice the parking tram, which takes you from the parking lot to the front of Hollywood Studios. There's a parking tram for all 4 parks at Walt Disney World. On the doors, it will tell you the cabin number. Our cabin number is 236. It also shows you what not to do in the cabin. Basically, just sit down and enjoy the ride. The cars that are coming in down below us are coming in from the main entrance gate to Hollywood Studios. They're going to reach a point where there's going to be a cast member telling them where to park. But again, more on that in a future video. The Skyliners have wraps and filters on them, as you can see here. If you notice, the color keeps changing slightly. Through the window, there's a bit of a glare as well. Now we're about to go over some water and some wetlands. These wetlands are actually protected by Disney. So from this point, we're about to leave those palm trees behind and have a good view of the wetlands. At these heights, even I find myself seeing things I've never noticed before. For example, I've driven to this parking lot so many times, and I am 100% serious when I tell you I've never realized there's a tiny bridge you drive over on the left here to get into the parking lot until making this video. Before entering this area, you'll present your park ticket or annual pass to a cast member, and you may need to provide your ID as well. This is also when you'll pay for parking, if you need to. This is how the parking lot works through most of the day. However, the later it gets in the day, you may see no cast members here and just signs directing you to park. This is also a way to get in without having to pay for parking, but more on that in my guide to parking and driving here. Now before we got the Disney Skyliner here at Walt Disney World, let's go over some history as to how we got here by going over its essentially spiritual predecessors. Almost a year after Disneyland opened in Anaheim in California, the Skyway, a gondola lift system, opened at the park in June of 1956, connecting Fantasyland and Tomorrowland. After that, the Magic Kingdom over here at Walt Disney World did something very similar and implemented the Skyway, connecting the same lands there when Walt Disney World opened in October of 1971. They also did this in Tokyo Disneyland as well in April 1983. So the Disneyland Skyway closed in November of 1994, the Magic Kingdom one closed in November of 1999, and the Tokyo Disneyland one closed in November of 1998. This is the Caribbean Beach Resort station. From here we can return the way we came to go back to Hollywood Studios, or we can head to Art of Animation and Pop Century because they're right next to each other, so it's the same stop and same Skyliner for that to the right, or head towards the Riviera Resort station, which at that point can then take us to the Epcot station. Sounds a little confusing. That's exactly what these videos are for. At this point, it's kind of hard to tell from this video, but from here you can see the one and only Spaceship Earth, or giant golf ball, which is the icon of Epcot. You can also start to see some of the resorts, such as the Caribbean Beach Resort, which is the station we're landing at. Below us is the highway. You can also see some of the Skyliner cabins that are out of commission to potentially be retired or worked on in this area to the left and the right. Like I said before we started our flight here, when you descend, the cabin will move fast and jolt a bit. It might take you by surprise if you're not paying attention. Now, once we fully stop, the doors will open and a lovely cast member will direct us to watch our step once again, and at that point, it's going to be time to depart from the cabin. Now, when you're boarding and when you're getting off of these, they sort of do this like slow swing motion, so keep that in mind as you're walking out and you're trying to keep your balance. It's sometimes not noticeable as you're walking, but the second you step out, you may notice it just a little bit. Now, you're going to get off right here unless you're on an accessibility Skyliner cabin, which I somehow was on one at the end of this video you're going to see. I think there was some confusion as to which cabin I was going to, but for those, for each of the Skyliner stations, you're actually going to wait a little bit longer and you're going to get off at a separate stop. Now, the ride you just watched also had 0 stops and delays, but don't worry, you're going to see how those work in future installments because it did happen to me. To the left there is that accessibility area. Also further to the left you see that Epcot Riviera Skyliner, and like I said, the right is Art of Animation and Pop Century, but straight ahead is the walkway to the Caribbean Beach Resort,